capital punishment is a legal penalty in the U.S. state of North Carolina. Despite remaining a legal penalty, there have been no executions in North Carolina since 2006. A series of lawsuits filed in state courts questioning the fairness and humanity of capital punishment have created a de facto moratorium on executions being carried out in North Carolina. In close to half of the states in the United States, the death penalty is written into law. The state spends over $42,000 per year to house each inmate in maximum security. At the same time, death penalty cases also cost 3 to 5 times what other murder trials cost, and taxpayers help cover hundreds of millions spent on settlements for wrongful convictions. National polls show a slight majority still favor the death penalty. However, for the first time, a 2019 public policy poll found most in North Carolina favor life in prison without parole for the most heinous crimes. From 2010 to 2020, North Carolina juries returned guilty verdicts in 62 of 64 capital trials, 58 for first-degree murder and 4 for second-degree murder, with 1 acquittal and 1 hung jury. By comparison, between fiscal years 2011 and 2021, prosecutors lost about 15% of nearly 600 non-capital murder trials that involved attorneys from the Office of Indigent Defense Services, which provides representation to defendants who can't afford their own lawyers, including in most murder cases. In another 20% of those trials, juries found defendants guilty of lesser offenses than first-degree murder. Until the 1940s, state law mandated death sentences for murder, rape, burglary, and arson. That made death qualification logical. Anyone who could not impose the death penalty might acquit. But the North Carolina Supreme Court maintained death qualification after the General Assembly allowed juries to grant mercy in capital cases. The legislature codified death qualification in 1977. The court upheld the practice again in 1986 and 2010. Few expect the state Supreme Court to reverse its position, especially under the 5-2 Republican majority elected in November. Questions were raised over the lethal injection drugs used and whether a doctor must be present at an execution. Then, high-profile death row exonerations and racial bias research compounded the challenge. A total 137 people are on North Carolina's death row, 19 of them added since 2006. 2 of those condemned to death are women. In that time, 20 of those waiting for their execution have died of natural causes, including Eric Lane, convicted of the 2022 rape and murder of a 5-year-old girl. Another 38 people have been exonerated or have their death sentences commuted to life. The 2 women currently on North Carolina's death row, these are their names and crimes committed. Blanche Kaiser Taylor Moore was born February 17, 1933. Blanche Taylor Moore is a serial killer. She killed her first husband, James Taylor, died on October 2, 1973. The cause of death was initially reported as a heart attack. After Taylor's death on October 2, 1973, Moore and Reed began dating publicly. By 1985, however, the relationship had soured. There are indications that she began to date Robert J. Hutton, Kroger's regional manager for the Piedmont Triad area. However, that relationship ended, and she filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against Hutton and Kroger in October 1985. Hutton was forced to resign, and Kroger settled the case out of court 2 years later for $275,000. In 1985, she also accused an unknown pervert of starting 2 fires that damaged her mobile home. On Easter Sunday, she met Reverend Dwight Moore, the divorced pastor of the Carolina United Church of Christ in rural Alamance County. Eventually, the two began meeting for meals. Blanche had to hide her budding relationship with Moore because her lawsuit against Kroger maintained that she was completely alienated and antagonistic towards men and has not been able to maintain any meaningful social contacts with the opposite sex. While she was dating Moore, she asked him to procure some arsenic-based ant killer for her. In 1986, Reed developed what was initially diagnosed as a case of shingles. He was hospitalized in April of that year and died on October 7, 1986. Doctors indicated the cause of death was Guillain-Barré syndrome. The Kroger lawsuit was settled 1 year later. Blanche and Moore began seeing each other publicly shortly after Reed's death. They planned to marry, but Blanche was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1987. The wedding date was pushed back to November 1988, but Moore developed a mysterious intestinal ailment that required 2 surgeries to correct. On April 19, 1989, the couple were married and honeymooned over a long weekend in New Jersey. Within days of their return, Moore became severely ill and collapsed after eating a fast food chicken sandwich that Blanche had given him. After so many tests at the hospital, the results came back on March 13th, showing Moore had 20 times the lethal dose of arsenic in his system, the most arsenic found in a living patient in the hospital's history. Moore had a particularly robust constitution and survived. However, he never regained full sensation in his hands and feet. The hospital informed the North Carolina police. Blanche Taylor Moore was arrested and convicted on November 14, 1990. Blanche Taylor Moore was convicted of killing her boyfriend by slipping arsenic into his food. Moore is suspected of killing 3 other people and nearly killing another in the same manner. On November 17th, the jury recommended the death penalty. On January 18, 1991, the presiding judge concurred with the jury and sentenced Moore to die by lethal injection. Moore appealed her sentence citing the Racial Justice Act, which allows death row inmates to use statistics and other evidence to prove racial bias played a significant role in them getting a death sentence. The Racial Justice Act was repealed in 2013, and Moore has lost all her other appeals. As of February 2023, 90-year-old Blanche Taylor Moore has spent more than 32 years on North Carolina's death row. Carlette Parker was born on June 12, 1963. Parker was a home health care worker who kidnapped 88-year-old Alice Covington, withdrew money equivalent to more than $40,000 from Covington's account, then drowned her in a bathtub. When examined, Covington had bruising around her ankles and legs, pepper spray on her clothing, and possible burns from a stun gun. At the time of her arrest, Parker had a stun gun and pepper spray in her possession. On the morning of the 12th of May 1998, Carlette Parker and Alice Covington saw each other at a Kroger parking lot on Creedmoor Road in Raleigh. Between 9 o'clock and 10 a.m., 3 witnesses saw Alice Covington and a heavy-set black woman struggling on Strickland Road. According to the witnesses, when the heavy-set woman attacked Alice Covington, the victim tried to get away by hitting the heavy-set woman over the head with her purse. Later that afternoon, against the victim's will, Carlette Parker drove the victim to the First Union Market Street teller window in Smithfield, and withdrew $2,500 from the Alice Covington's account. Carlette Parker gave the teller a withdrawal slip and Alice Covington's driver's license. The teller looked into the car and saw the victim in the passenger seat, leaning against the car door. Alice Covington was not moving and appeared to be napping. Carlette Parker drove the victim back to the Kroger parking lot, moved her to Parker's Ford Fiesta hatchback, and drove to defendant's trailer in Angier, North Carolina, where Alice Covington drowned in the bathtub. Parker undressed Alice Covington's body, washed her clothes, redressed the body, and put the body in the hatchback of Parker's car. Carlette Parker then left in a separate vehicle and drove to a family party. After leaving the party, Parker drove around for several hours. A passerby saw the body and informed the police. On the 16th of May 1998, police conducted 2 more interviews with Carlette Parker. She was arrested for the crime. On May 21, 1998, Raleigh police charged Carlette Parker with first-degree murder in the death of Alice Covington, an elderly woman found in Morrisville. On April 1, 1999, Carlette Parker was sentenced to death. In 2002, Parker's petition to the United States Supreme Court for a writ of certiorari was denied. As of February 2023, Carlette Parker has spent more than 23 years on North Carolina's death row. Thank you for watching Death Row.